me pick up on the first point, Mr. Iyer, that you mentioned, and Mr. Parekh, I want to bring you in here because this whole aspect of market-determined pricing in order to bring in investors, and that is really the underlying point. And you've been part of committees as far as deregulation is concerned, and all of us were waiting for. Unfortunately, were not acted upon.
No, but let me touch the earlier point also. I think yes, we have ample resources that we have not adequately exploited. And the greatest example to my mind is that coal, which we have lots of reserves in the country. The 12th plan is reported to be targeting 200 million tons of coal imports by the end of the plan. Now, why can't we domestically increase production by 200 million tons of coal? I cannot understand it. We need to bring in technology, we need to bring in resources, we need to open up the sector in a way that more people can come, a lot of production of coal can take place.
Mr. Khan, you are advising, Mr. Parekh, you are advising, you are part of the government, I mean, you're part of the Congress party. Yes, you are, you're giving all the solutions.
I thought I was portrayed as the internal opposition.
No, I can put it in a different way. No, I'll just supplement what Dr. Parekh was saying. We are not planning to import 200 million tons, but this is the gap between. So the idea is to increase the production. The current level is only 540 million tons. So our expectation is it should go to 800 million tons. That itself is a jump of 250-260 million tons. But we seeing the conditions of these clearances, the forest awareness, environment issues are there. And as Mr. Dadu was saying, 180 projects are already pending. Of course, the GOM constituted is looking into the issue. They are trying to expedite the process. But our expectation is, maximum the production can reach only to the 800 million ton. And remaining 200 million tons, because the expected demand is 1,000 million tons that time.
Right. So in fact, there has been talk that in terms of the way this entire production sharing contracts are actually structured, that perhaps one needs to relook at that aspect. Mr. Iyer,
I don't agree with you at all.
Why
because the PSC was known from about 1997 all the way through till 2006, and it caused no problems to anyone. We just went on every single nell, increasing the number of blocks we were putting on the auction block and the number of people who were coming in to take it. The problem with the PSCs has only arisen subsequently, partly over the question of the pricing of gas and partly over the question of what is the recovery that the private investor might make. But I don't think the problem basically lies in the PSC. The problem lies in then making changes in policy which render the PSC that was signed look as if it was not sacred or sacrosanct. Now, I think
I absolutely agree. I absolutely agree what say. This PSC is a perfect document. Thing is, it has to be implemented in letter and spirit. Only that is to be seen, that what is letter and spirit, and that is to be seen. And I must say, even the institution like the CAG, I don't think they are doing that enough service to the nation by finding fault with each and everything. So I think a lot has to be seen in the implementation of these existing PSCs itself.
But I go from one ministry to another. One ministry says, okay, I didn't know about this. The other says, I'm sorry, I can't give you the clearance. So my project doesn't actually move forward. Who wants to take this up? I mean, how do I...
I think you've hit the nail on the head. In China, they don't have many ministers. They have a czar who deals with all the energy sources.
You don't see that happening here.
His name was Mandai in my time. And what we need in India is, if you can't have one Ministry of Energy Sources, at least let us have Cabinet Committee for Energy Resources.
So, Shankar, you're shaking your head. You don't think that's required?
Committees have never worked well. And as I told you, being very old, the question of railway, coal ministry and the user power ministry, they have been having a committee under the cabinet.
How do you overcome this situation, sir?
Very simple, very simple. The rationale for people to intervene in these matters should also be kept in view. Now, any environmental ministry is thinking only about environment, but not the priorities, the trade-offs involved in giving up certain environmental things.
So, everybody understands the thinking behind every ministry. They want to protect their own turf.
So you have to tell them clearly that you are not going to
Who
be
is going to
judged.
tell them that?
The parliament should say that I want you to show how many tons of coal you have moved and why did you not move. The coal ministry must be asked the kind of monitoring, the criteria for monitoring has to be set.
I don't think these strategy of more regulation, more coordination,
Or having a new regulator
more ministers
Committees.
and more committees is going to work. I think what we need to do is to really liberalize,
Exactly.
really throw it open to market,
Yeah.
remove many of these obstacles, but keep the public interest in mind, and that can be done very clearly. I mean, you can auction things, but once you auction, don't interfere. You want to let them have market price, let them have market price, but protect the poor through properly
directed
targeted
subsidies or-
subsidies and so on. We are hoping that the bureaucracy will save us from bureaucracy. I think this is just not going to
Mr. Radu has expectantly raised his finger at this. Yes, tell them.
You see, if you look at since the time of the introduction of the new exploration licensing policies, 60 discoveries have been made, of which 51 are gas discoveries.
Right.
Only 2 of them have got into production phase. I want to know why. Okay, you're talking about a committee. There's a committee which the Prime Minister has set up under Dr. C. Rangarajan only to look at future production sharing contracts in the hydrocarbon exploration.
Right, absolutely.
The point I'm trying to say is there are enough committees and enough decisions have been taken. Instead of bashing the government all the time, let us see how much work has been done downstream on the approvals. It's very difficult to find out why investment decisions by the private sector have not been taken in these very critical sectors.
Right. This is a discussion which can keep going around and on those points which we all know are there. But we'll have to conclude the discussion. Having said that, we've of course not come to any resolution, not expected to, but at least ideas at this point in time, because we all recognize we are in a crisis mode. So one idea, sir, from you, Mr. Sharma, which might work independent of whichever political situation we find ourselves in. Is it possible?
There has to be multi-pronged activity on all fronts. Produce optimally from the domestic fields, make the efforts for making investments overseas for the imports, non-conventionals, promote non-conventionals, renewables, and one important thing that nobody has talked about, there is no demand discipline in the country.
Because
the
of
consumer
skewed
has to be
pricing,
educated, there has to be conservation. It's not
Right. Okay, Dipesh, closing
I
comment?
think I would say that once we frame a certain rule and set the rule for the game, we should stick to it. I think that would be good enough.
Radu?
Let me throw some more figures at you. Ultra mega power projects is a new scheme of the government where capacity of 4,000 megawatts each is planned in 9 states of the country. 4 of these states are pithead sites at Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, Madhya Pradesh and Orissa. 5 coastal states are going to import all the requirements. So here we have a policy where you try and generate the resources from the pithead sites, and where you can't, you import. This is a make and buy policy, which will add tremendous amount of power generation in the country. 76,000 megawatts in 5 years is not a joke. I agree that 5 lakh megawatts is added by China, but then China is not a democratic country. I just come from China.
Your committee...
I think we have been hiding behind this democracy far too long. I would suggest that we can certainly, apart from setting up the market and pricing and cleaning that up, perhaps we can take one measure and say that we will reduce the number of clearances required in starting any energy project from 60 to less than 10. And if we can do that, that would be a great reform and maybe push up the rate at which new projects can come up.
Mr. Sankar?
It's very simple. Having been in this play, in this area for a long time, I have come to the conclusion that all control should be taken off. We should have a free market in energy. The consumer should be given overall, like your Sodex Corp. I am working on a paper where 500 rupees per family household is given and only for energy subsidy, which they can use for coal, oil, firewood or anything,
Right.
will cost you just 60,000 crores, which is 1/3 of what we are collecting from the petroleum sector alone. And no, similarly, our public sector is very mature now. Let there be total freedom for people to import and sell. Oil prices will come down and the consumer will be protected because he can use his money either for buying gasoline or for buying kerosene or for paying his electricity bills.
Right. Mr. Khan?
So the situation is not so critical as is projected. This more noises are you are hearing because the share of private sector is going on increasing. Okay.
So you're saying situation is not so bad.
Not
You
so
continue-
bad.
you-
No,
you
not
continue like
no.
this.
So what reforms are taking place? The policy decisions are being taken to facilitate that process. You are seeing for example the coal one I am referring.
Right.
Last year, the people say there are so much of capacity stranded. If you see coal-based generation has improved by 9.5%.
Okay. So, Ms. Iyer, finally to you, what's the message you're going to go back to your party and
If
tell
you
them?
cannot have a minister who is the energy resources czar, the prime minister should be the energy resources czar, which should become a high matter of policy that energy security is assured. We have to ensure that the investment takes place, the technology comes in or is invented, and that the consumer is protected. And I would go along with his 500 rupees idea, provided it is indexed.
Okay. That brings us to the end of this panel discussion. Now, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And really trying to bring out many issues which are plaguing the sector and how we can move towards energy security.